what is the difference between cows and oxen? Cattle are among the oldest and most common forms of livestock in the world today. We rely on these ancient creatures for meat, milk, and their capacity for work, and some people even keep cattle for the simple reason of companionship. But what gives with all the terminology? Words like cow or oxen are often used to refer to cattle, and we're here to find out why. What makes an animal a cow? And what makes it an oxen? Let's talk about it. Cows. In the strictest sense of the word, a cow is a mature female ungulate that has given birth at least once. That includes female cattle, buffaloes, bison, and even whales that have had calves. In regular everyday speech, though, cow often refers to domestic cattle, Bos taurus and Bos indicus, which are among the most common forms of livestock around. These animals are part of the Bovidae family, which also includes aurochs, buffalo, bison, sheep, goats, and antelopes. Today we have over 1,000 breeds of cattle. The word cattle is a derivative of the Anglo-Norman word catel and was originally used to refer to any movable personal property, like livestock. The word cow comes from the Anglo-Saxon term gus, which means bovine animal. Today, the average person uses cow regardless of whether the animal in question is male or female, young or old. Cattle are known as artiodactyls, or even-toed ungulates. Their third and fourth toes make up the cloven hooves they walk on. Like many bovidae animals, cattle can grow permanent unbranched horns, though some breeds and individuals don't. An example of branched horns are deer antlers, which look like tree branches. Cattle are large animals, and size varies depending on breed, sex, and general conditions. Chianina cattle, the largest breed around, can be up to 5 feet 11 inches at the shoulder and weigh as much as 2,820 pounds. Intact mature males, known as bulls, are larger than mature bred females, which are known as cows of the same breed. Cattle also come in a variety of colors and coat types. Colors include red, brown, tawny brown, olive brown, gray, white, and black. Many breeds and individuals sport spots or mixed color patches. The iconic Jersey dairy breed is typified by black and white patches, for instance, while the Indian Brahman breeds are often gray or white. Coats vary too, with some cold weather breeds sporting longer, shaggier coats than most warm weather breeds. Like most ungulates, cattle are herbivores. Grass is their staple, but they do partake in leaves and even fruit. At the heart of their digestive system is their massive four-chambered stomach, which facilitates a thorough and complex way of digesting food. Like many ruminants, this digestive system involves regurgitation of swallowed food for re-chewing or chewing the cud. Like many herbivores, cattle are considered prey animals that have evolved to look out for predators. As a result, they are highly sensitive to sights, sounds, and smells. Their eyes are on either side of their heads rather than in front, and this gives them a wide 330-degree field of view. Their hearing is excellent. They can identify other cattle through vocalizations. Of course, we can't have a thorough discussion about cattle without looking at some common terminology. We already know that mature intact males are bulls, and that females that have had young are cows. But we also have names like heifer, which refers to young females that haven't given birth yet, and oxen, which we'll be talking about a little later. As you already know, cattle have a bunch of uses for humans. We kill them and eat their meat, which is more commonly known as beef. Steaks, sausages, burgers, mince, and meatballs are just a few popular beef products, as are ox liver, heart, tongue, and ox tail. Meat from calves and juvenile cattle is known as veal. Cattle are also used for dairy, and the global commercial dairy industries rely on specialized dairy breeds for the highest yields of milk. Popular dairy products are cheese, ice cream, creamers, and milk itself. Then we have leather, which is usually derived from cattle hides, though other animals like snakes, crocodiles, buffalo, elephants, and reptiles are used to make exotic leathers too. Leather is used to make all sorts of things, including belts, bags, shoes, wallets, car seats, and upholstery, and more. Cattle also lend us their incredible capacity for work. Most cattle work is draft work, which is the pulling of objects and carts. Cattle are used to pull transport and haulage carts, plows, and anything else that requires a bit of extra muscle. They have high trainability in this regard, and their endurance often exceeds horses, donkeys, and other traditional draft animals. Many parts of the world still rely heavily on agriculture based on cattle-drawn plows and carts. Apart from their traditional roles in agriculture and food production, cattle are among the world's oldest forms of wealth. Many cultures regard owning them as a status symbol. In Zulu culture, a king or lord's wealth, power, and influence could be easily determined by looking at how many cattle he had in his kraals. In Africa, cows and cattle are a common form of dowry used to bring families together through marriage. Cattle also hold great spiritual significance for some cultures. Hinduism is the ultimate example, with cattle being featured prominently in sacred texts and depictions. Because of this, cattle are highly sacred in India and surrounding areas, and one can even face criminal charges for treating them badly. Additionally, like many domestic animals, cattle can also be kept and treated as pets. They can be very friendly if socialized properly, and sometimes, especially docile breeds and individuals, are bred for the sole reason of companionship. The animals themselves are highly social by nature. They have dominance hierarchies based on size and strength, and both males and females often engage in pushing and mock fighting to establish their place within the hierarchy. Of course, bulls are the most aggressive and often fight for real if they are not physically separated. No one knows exactly when cattle were first domesticated, but most evidence points to the Neolithic age, around 10,500 years ago. They are directly descended from the now extinct aurochs, and most modern breeds hail from two main lines. There is the taurine line, Taurus, which is made up of aurochs descendants in Central Asia and Western Iran. Then there is the Indocene line, Indicus, which originated in Pakistan. Of course, there has been some mixing and mingling of the genetics over the centuries and millennia, but most breeds still lean one way or the other. Cattle breeding was, and still is, a deeply impactful practice that allows selection of behavioral and yield traits. One major result of this is that we now have specialist breeds for meat, dairy, leather, and work. Luxury brands like Rolls-Royce, Ferrari, and Hermes, for example, only use the finest leather in the world for their products, going as far as rejecting hides for blemishes and even mosquito bites. Of course, many poorer areas of the world do not specialize as much as the commercial sectors and often use the same cattle for both produce and labor. In such places, it's not uncommon for a single cow to be responsible for providing milk, pulling plows, and eventually providing meat. In recent times, cattle have found themselves at the center of massive ethical debates. The leather, dairy, and beef industries are often in the headlines for animal wellness issues and the overall ethics of harvesting any kind of produce or products from them. In fact, a growing number of people have gone vegetarian or vegan, turned their backs on dairy, and even sought out synthetic leather products in protest to these cattle-based industries. That said, most of the world still relies on cattle or cattle labor to some degree. Even some vegans can't escape that their veggies might come from farms that use cattle labor or that cattle manure was used in growing said vegetables. Oxen. Like cow, the word oxen can have murky definitions. So then, what are oxen? Well, oxen are cattle trained and used for draft work. Both taurine and Indocene cattle can be oxen. In Asia, domestic water buffalo, Bubulus bubulus, are also used for draft work, making them a type of oxen too. The word oxen is the plural form of ox. In many cases, male cattle are chosen for the role because of their size and strength. However, these guys are usually castrated to curb testosterone production, which makes them more docile and obedient. Use of intact bulls is widely discouraged because they are far more unruly, more susceptible to natural urges, and generally more dangerous, though some folks still use them. The wide use of castrated male cattle is therefore why oxen are sometimes referred to as bullocks in some parts of the world. That said, heifers and cows are also used as oxen, usually because of some constraints. For instance, some farmers with only one bull would rather use female cattle for work than castrate a sire for future calves. In many cases, oxen are used in tandem as part of a team. A team of oxen is usually a single pair yoked side by side, but additional pairs may be yoked behind the lead pair if the load is especially heavy. In extreme cases, as many as 10 pairs may be needed for a job. Oxen work with a bunch of tools and equipment, chief of which are carts, wagons, and plows. Their pulling power can also be used for powering manual grain grinding machines or old-school irrigation and water supply equipment. Some lumberjacks even rely on them to pull felled trees during logging. Basically, if you have something that needs pulling in a fairly large space, oxen can probably do the job. Humans have trained and used oxen for thousands of years, with historic and archaeological evidence suggesting the practice began around 4000 BCE. A team of oxen are trained to work with a human instructor, known as a teamster, ox driver, or bullocky. The teamster issues verbal commands like whoa or back, as well as whistles and clicks, and the animals are trained to respond. In many cases, teamsters will also use ropes, reins, rods, whips, or prods to reinforce instructions. Naturally, different parts of the world have their own specific commands and driving practices. Younger oxen are often paired with older, more seasoned animals so they can get to grips with the work quicker. However, outside training, drivers tend to use the same pairs because of efficiency and familiarity. Sometimes, oxen may simply not get along with one another for whatever reason. These are intelligent animals after all, and sometimes personalities don't mesh. Another common practice is to yoke oxen the same way round every time, especially when each side of the yoke requires independent instruction. In rarer cases, oxes are trained to be ridden, though oxback riding is far slower than horseback riding. Oxen have a slow and steady approach compared to the relative briskness of horses. Of course, slow and steady has its advantages, namely when plowing in thick mud or along hilly terrain. Like domestic horses, oxen are often equipped with shoes. However, because of the cattle's cloven hooves, each foot requires 2 banana-shaped shoes. Oxen are a deep part of many traditional and modern cultures, and they are an iconic symbol of work and productivity. These animals are still crucial factors behind agriculture and transportation in many of the world's developing areas.